Good morning, Malcolm. Welcome.
Hi. Hello, everyone.
Hello.
Good morning, Robert and John and Maggie.
Morning.
Hello, everyone.
Malcolm, I'm glad you were able to join. Thanks to Rebecca and my friendship, our mutual friendship.
Thank you. I'm really glad to be here too. Thank you. Thank you for passing that on to her.
Hi, I'm also really glad to be here. I'm going to be moving around and stuff, so I'm going to like mute and turn my camera off the whole time, but I'm really glad to hear what Getry has to say.
Oh my goodness. We're at 7:31. This is new to me, Michelle. The chat is filling up with naming people who've joined.
New Zoom feature.
Ah, okay. Well, we are handicapped this morning. One of our primary leaders, Robert Mboise, who was going to be our he's one of the three coordinators of Equatorial Voices Network, along with Getry and Rahul Patel. Robert's fiance was hospitalized, and I don't have the details, but I think there's a good chance that he may not be with us today. Getry does not have power. She's working off a battery that will hopefully get us through the morning's presentation. And Rahul was here a few minutes ago, bright-eyed and bushy-tailed, because we actually started early enough that he's not as exhausted as he usually is on Indian time. But Rahul has disappeared for the moment as well. So
Robert and Boise is present.
oh,
I can see.
I have, never mind. I've got to change this. I have a hiding people who aren't here. Good morning, Robert. I'm not sure why I'm not seeing you, but welcome. Are you on camera and you want to lead us off, please, now? There you are. Ah, brilliant.
Hey, everyone. Glad to see you all. I'm seeing new faces. Hello, Malcolm. Hello, Robert Coleman, John, and many others. Getry, our lead discussant today. It's a pleasure to meet you all. So, Nancy, have you already shared the agenda?
I have, but I'm going to do it again. I'll put it in to the chat. I could also do a share screen on it, but this new feature on chat is driving me crazy. It's sucking up all the chat space. Okay, I'm putting it in chat again, Robert.
Okay.
It is now in chat. Robert, would you like me to try to do a screen share with it as well?
It's fine.
Okay. So
I'm going to get this off.
And Rahul was here a while ago, Robert, but not here yet.
Rahul is on. Rahul is on.
Oh, I
It's
don't know why
just
I'm not seeing
his
people.
video
Oh,
is off.
got it.
Are you able to share?
Robert, could you please check, is my voice is coming natural or having any disturbance in the background?
It is fine, Rahul. It's fine. You are clear actually.
All right. Thank you. Thank you, Robert.
So, colleagues, Nance has already shared our agenda for today in the chat. And we had previously encouraged members to share and introduce themselves in the chat, talk about who they are, where they are from, their professional, and anything that relates to their work. Then also we'll have Rahul opening up with an overview of why we are here, the purpose of these discussions or dialogues that we are having. Then I'll come in and talk about EVN briefly. Then after that, Nancy will usher our lead discussant or presenter today, Getry, also a coordinator under EVN. Then Getry's presentation will take 30 minutes. Sorry. Then we shall have breakout rooms where we shall discuss in relation to what the presentation will have been about. Then after that, we shall come back for a general discussion around 30 minutes. Then we proceed to takeaways and conclusions. So, Nance, I don't know whether you are able to share or we can proceed, because we already 8 minutes past.
Yes, I'm happy to do that. I have the great delight to introduce and privilege to introduce Getry Agizah today. Many of you have heard me speak of her in different contexts. Getry is a renowned, I would say, peacemaker in Kenya who had a major role when the election violence occurred in 2000, 2008, 2007 and 8. She's a longtime Quaker leader in Kenya, has become a very close friend, and always in her presence, she brings a compassion and a wisdom and just good common sense and a great laugh when it's needed, and is fully present and just gets us to relax and deeply hear each other. And no matter what we're talking about, the compassion is there that shifts the energy. And I'm going to let Getry tell her own stories about some of the things she's done. I invited her. I don't usually do the inviting. That's the rest of the leadership of EVN, and I'm a friend, not a coordinator. But this time I spoke up, and this time not so much addressing fellow equatorial voices, although there's certainly great interest there. But I've reached out to a lot more Americans because her experiences, I know the level of concern we are feeling about not only our upcoming elections, but for the first time in my life, the concerns about what happens after the elections, either way. So I asked Getry to benefit us with her wisdom in this challenging time for us. So Getry, my dear friend, I'm going to turn this over to you.
Thank you, Nancy. I'd like to thank the team of EVN coordinators. I think for a while, We have reached so many people in a way that we do not even know. The effort you have put together to make sure that we pass knowledge or we share whatever we know has actually been met with a lot of love around the globe. And I want to appreciate. I also want to appreciate climate change because of you, so we are. The Ubuntu spirit. If it was not the efforts of Anne, Linda, John, some of us will not have been where we are. I want to applaud and appreciate David Alberts. I like calling him Papa. He was a very close friend of my mentor who died some time back. And every time I think about David Zaremka, I just see David Alberts. So he has actually taken up a role that he might not be knowing, but I appreciate that God is giving me this opportunity to continue having this connection and friendship. And I want to thank all of us, Nancy. You have tolerated us. We've made you disappointed, frustrated, but you've made this journey come. Today was supposed to be a special presentation. Usually we keep talking about climate change, but as we talk about climate change, we have what we call the emerging issues. And where is the world heading to? And so in honor of the North American friends, as they go to election, I was asked to prepare about election prevention, election violence prevention. And I'll talk from the knowledge I have of what we've done in Kenya for the past couple of years after the 2008 election that happened and the violence that erupted unplanned.
At this point, just how crucial is it for the Ukrainians?
I have shared with Linda kind of a summary PowerPoint, which I'll quickly go through it. But I think the major focus is just our listening and our understanding and our asking questions, because we are here to have a dialogue, not to just listen to me, and also look on how can we coexist even after the election in November. Kenya, when we have been having series of election in 1992, 1997, after every 5 years, Kenya is going into election. From the independence time, it was clear the leader of the Mau Mau was Mzee Jomo Kenyatta, was trusted by a responsibility until he died being a president. His deputy, President, the late President Moi, took over and led Kenya for 24 years. At that time, I think during his tenure, at the middle of this, at the middle of his ruling, it's when he started having something called multipartyism. And multipartyism was a very exciting journey because people are also exercising to practice their freedom in civic responsibility and just knowing on how it feels having other parties apart from the one leading party. Although the then president was not comfortable with multi-party, so he tried resisting it. But as you said, when people go to school and they want to get that freedom, they have to forge themselves. At some point, he became a dictator and he was leading Kenya in a way that he felt was best. But then now what took President Moi out of being a president was not death, but was when there was coalition parties coming together to form a one party, so that there was strength in unity to fight the evil, as you would have said during that time. But I think the Kenyan people were unaware of what they were getting involved in, or probably they were not paying attention to the things that were bothering them. How do I bring it back home? In 2007, when you're going into election, it was during the second term of President Mwai Kibaki. After his first term, he was taken in by the coalition government, by the coalition parties coming together to form a party. That's what took President Moi out. When Kibaki came in power, there was an agreement of you'll do a term of 5 years, and then the leader of the opposition leader was to take up after 5 years and be the president for another 5 years. But as they say in Swahili, kiti ni tamu, the chair is sweet. When President Kibaki became the president, his second term was met with a lot of resistance and violence. Most of the time, even at the moment, if you ask me, were the election rigged? I cannot give you a certain answer. Because the violence that happened was beyond just the election. Maki, you're talking about a country that has got 42 tribes. The 42 tribes, you have 3 major tribes that fought during the colonial period. And so they believe they own majorly part of Kenya because they fought for independence during colonial period. When President Kibaki stuck on position, or probably when the opposition leader felt that it was not fair, he wasn't getting that opportunity of being the president, that's when you realize that parties were now not coming in unity against the evil president that we would have named him, but parties were now aligning tribally. So you have your tribe and your party leader, but then you pick other small tribes that can support you so that you have numbers. And that became so difficult even for the whole system to work, because I remember in 2008, we had police deployment anyhow in any town, and then they'll go to different tribes and kill people innocently because they felt their tribe is being killed on the other end. And that saw so many Kenyans dying, a lot of property destroyed, so many people are displaced. But the majority of people who were affected were the tribe called the Kikuyu and the Kalenjin, because they are tribes that, the Kikuyu is a tribe that of the first president, the third president, while Kalenjin are the tribe of the second president of Kenya. So did we even plan for election violence? No. We went into election like any normal day. People voted, people went back home, and Kenya has a system whereby we just have a 1 day to vote, and then the election counting and the vote counting and all the process happens for like another 4 days or 5 days before the president is announced. So for these 4 to 5 days, during that time in 2007, we will do election in December. So by the time the elections were being counted, the votes were being counted, it was getting into January 2008 that people need to celebrate Happy New Year, that Kenya started burning. And at that time, you don't know your friend or enemy. People will attack east-west. I remember of a scenario of a man who was standing in a shop trying to buy some milk for his family. And when they announced the president, this shopkeeper, the buyer was just moved inside the shop and slapped the shopkeeper without any intention. I mean, just because they had the news of who is the president. So that's where we are. Kenya was burning. From that time, that's when you realize that the world has been taking Kenya to be a peaceful country. A bed of roses, a very nice place, a receptive place. People loved Kenya because of what it meant in Africa, especially East Africa, because a lot of genocide that happened in Rwanda, the civil war in Burundi, in Congo, in Uganda, everybody was feeling more safe to come to Kenya. So for Kenya to have the violence was kind of, this is not it. So many friends pulled together to see how can we support. And I'm actually a Quaker. And so I worked with Quakers around that. And so many Quakers really said, can we help? Because being a peace church, people felt like it is our responsibility to make sure that we are doing the right thing. Friends, at the time of crisis, you cannot say you're coming to bring peace. First of all, you bring your ears and your presence, because that is what is needed in tension, when people are having tension around them. And so we tried to calm down. Things were coming to normality. We had all this mediation with Kofi Annan. We had all the mediation with prominent people from the world coming to make sure that they help Kenya solve their problem. As time went by, a lot of issues were rushed before we went into total reconciliation. By the time you're realizing we need to go to reconciliation, it was already 2013. That was 2008. So 5 years down the line, it was already time for another election. And I think that's when we said, no, we cannot wait for another fire to burn us while we are seated. Can we prepare for what will happen? Because already during the campaign period, there are a lot of tension. What makes this topic more relevant in this scenario? We have the media. We have the political parties. We have the presidential candidates. We have, for the US, we have the Congress. We have the, all the political leaders have had a chance to campaign for the side they believe is the right side for people. But remember, we are doing this because my mind and your mind are thinking different things. We are pulling from different strings, but you have to make a decision on one. Because by the end of the day, it has to be one president. So as we got ready, we realized that people went into violence, number one, because they did not understand the roles of politicians in the system. Number two, we just had a very new constitution that was, a referendum was done in 2010. And so people did not understand what the constitution was talking about, the rights to vote, what the constitution was talking about, the rights, the basic human rights, what the constitution talked about, leadership and integrity. People did not understand that. And so politicians look at that loophole to make sure that they confuse these citizens. By the time they get to election, they're ready to die for them. I remember the current president was actually vying for, no, he was one among the people who were taken to international criminal courts as a perpetrator of the violence in 2008. But when President Ruto went to court, his tribesmen, and they're very young people actually, there are people who are between age 18 to 24. They all were saying that if you touch our own son, fire will break out in Kenya. It was nothing to do about if he's a good leader or not. It was going back to our own. Don't touch our own. And so the Kalenjins are saying, don't touch our own. The Luos are saying, don't touch our own. The Kikuyas are saying, don't touch our own. And yet, the International Criminal Court looks at, can we give justice to those who got hurt? Can we give justice to the people who died? So this was becoming a dilemma. And yet you're already in another election. So as campaign went by, the politicians stood up to start all the propaganda. You do this, even things that are very clearly to be lied. For example, you're telling that a population of over 58 million people, that all the young people have no employment. When I become a president, I'll be paying them salary of $60 each or $50 each. And you do not know that, you're just clearly aware that you're talking about getting tax from people. How will this implemented? And it's a clear way of it's a political move or a political sweet tongue. But people believed. So how did we move in 2013? First was to start with civic education before the election day. Usually an election has 3 sessions. There is a pre-electoral session, then during the election, and then post-election. So during we went into civic education with local grassroots. We went to churches, local communities. We call them chiefs, barazas, when people are having like a local meeting that is led by administrator, to just talk about the constitution. And our focus was now, because we cannot do the whole constitution, you do not have time. Our focus on very key things. Importance of what constitution means to you, Number two, we are talking about basic human rights. So that when I go to the streets and block your car and burn your car down, you have your rights. And I'm violating that. People understanding what they're doing and the consequences. Then, number three, we were looking at leadership and integrity. Who do you bring on board as your political leader? Let's say a member of parliament, a president, a women representative, so that you take responsibility of the people that you are electing as a person. So we try to move with speed to make sure we reach as many people as we can. And civic education was more an open discussion. You'll get in a session, we have over 120 participants. In a session, you have over 200 and something participants, because we'll use a church hall and just mobilize people using the administrator. But as time went by, we will get to place that we needed to start another system that we had to put it in place called a calling center. A calling center was a system that was used by a phone, because we realized that majority of Kenyans were having phones. So a calling center would assist individuals. If you see anything that you feel is a threat to the peace that we have, you send a coded message to our system. When you receive that coded message, we quickly alert the right intervention strategy. So for example, if it's a message you're sending that you feel like there is a big number of young people mobilized in a center of a place and they're kind of sensing they're dangerous, you send this message and we alert the security personnel in that community so that they're on the watch out to make sure that this is not happening before people attack others at night or during the day. If you send there is a conflict between two people and it's mounting into pressure, you send a message, you know, this needs a training. So we move to this community and do a training. It could be a training on mediation. It could be a training on, I don't know if most of you know, alternative to violence, especially for the young people. When you talk about alternative to violence, you're talking about ways to respond to the anger and the fear we have by taking self-responsibility in our action. So we will put responses to needs that are coming from the community. But again, we were at a risk of receiving information from rumors that might not be true. So how do we verify this information? We had to train some few individuals in various hotspot areas, who we call the watchdog unit. The watchdog unit where people are paying attention to the movement and the activities in the community. So when we receive a threatening message or a sensitive message on our calling center, we send that message to we change the coding and send the message to the watchdog unit group. Then they investigate and send that we confirm this is happening in the community. And then that gives us a go ahead. How do we address this? Some of the things that are coming on board, friends, in our calling center were more like people's anxiety. And that one we could call a dialogue and ask people, let us sit down and talk among ourselves. How do you approach these issues? Because even after election, we are one people. So that gave us enough energy to make sure we moved with many people. By the time you're getting in 2013 election, I wouldn't say it was, I wouldn't say that it was a credible election, because there are people, of course, who raised concerns, but it was calm and peaceful because there was no violence in 2013. But yes, before the election, before the election day, there were threats to violence. And so that again made us to continue, because we couldn't say because the violence, the election has finished, that we have ended our work. No, we went ahead and started to mold in. How do we get involved more and make sure that the government is accountable in the things that are happening? And from then, we found ourselves getting more closer to working with community at the grassroots to ensure that they have enough civic education, because that is still a gap. The population you have reached is like a drop in an ocean. out of the millions we have, there are people still struggling to understand the Constitution and even understanding their rights as voters. And as we go through that, we equally look at how do we do cross-border ethnic dialogue. I normally call it transformative dialogue, which focuses more on interaction. We might have our disagreements. We might have our different opinions, but transformative dialogue looks at the interaction between us. However enmity you have among ourselves, the interaction is much more important. And so it natures on that, not on the pending issues that are lying. Because if we can interact, then we can solve the issues that are around us. And so we have moved in communities, but by the time you're getting to 2017 election, we had reached a good number of citizens who are looking at, I know my rights, but I also respect the people who are next to me who have their rights. As we got into election in 2017, that is when we had President Uhuru and President Ruto coming in to work together to be in the government. It was a struggle, even for the opposition. But the two of them were among the perpetrators, as international criminal courts has declared, in the case that was happening in 2008 election. But again, they emerged winners, so I say, in the election in Kenya. Uhuru being the president, Ruto being the deputy. As I speak currently right now, our president is Ruto, who was among, again, still, who was had a questionable character in the international criminal courts. What am I saying? It's not like we are yet mature enough to know when you vote rightly or to follow the systems of election process. But we are mature enough to know that even after the election, there will be results. And we have to face the consequences and live by the consequences the other day. So when you look at mitigation and prevention measures, as I said first, focusing on civic education, do we understand what election means? Do those people understand what election means? I might be understanding what it means, but do other people know what it entails? Civic education has become a very key role when it comes to election prevention, because people will need to understand the propaganda that is going around, reason with it. You cannot tell me when I'll be a president, I'll buy all of you new houses. And the truth is that you cannot do that. You can't afford to buy for every Kenyan a house. You can't afford to solve problems in America. Whoever is a presidential candidate in America, whatever they say, when you look at their sentiments, you can easily know, according to the Constitution and our resources are being subjected to, this is what can happen, this cannot happen. So people need to know what is happening around themselves as elections campaign are going on. Number two, a prevention methodology is dialogue. How many meetings do we hold? And I appreciate America, because why I'm bringing America on board at this point is, as we talk about social infrastructure, America is more developed. You talk about, it's not like Getry has to look for local people around to go to a meeting in a church. If, for example, I have David Alberts and then I have Robert Coleman, they all have two different friends, who are friends of Robert will also be friends of other friends of Robert, and the circle will continue like that. But how do we keep that relationship going so that we can talk about the immediate issues? Because there are things you cannot put under the carpet. So dialogue becomes an important thing that we cannot say that, oh, we'll have a dialogue once every 2 months, and yet you're getting into election and you want people to be relaxed and at peace. Then number three, we have the role of election observers. In 2008-2013, we were not able to be involved in the election observer because we felt like the tension was more when people are doing campaign. But we realized that every time there are questions about the credibility of election, So in 2022, no, in 2017, we realized that we needed to start planning and starting on election observers. So we did our first election observation in 2022, which we wrote a report and gave to the electoral body. And of course, having all these observers from other countries coming together and sentiments on our views about the electoral process. So being alert during the election time, watching out so that you're not among the people, and I'm sorry, I'll use, like John, I'll use as an example. You're seated and you're a leader, and you're having an argument with members in a meeting or something and say that, I know these elections were rigged. And to be sure, you are not even aware. You're either listening from a news or just speaking it from social media, and you're very certain it really happened. Do you have facts? And that's why it's hard to know. I was in the US recently, and I saw friends were struggling, saying that this is the right news channel we can watch. This is the right news channel we can watch. Oh, this is for this political party. And I was like, well, it means there is a lot of loopholes that has happened that we don't know which one to trust. So people want to resonate with what they feel they want to, but might be true or not true. So election observation, and you don't even need to be in a polling center to know if the election are peaceful or process is going well. But if you are able to get to a center, I don't know about America, but for us in Kenya, you have to register to be in a polling center and get a card, and you can access any information you want. So that is very important. Another thing is use of social media platform. And please, friend, I'm from Africa, so don't judge me. I'm just using my own upfront mind. I was watching my Facebook page recently, and I saw my very close friends from America, 3 of them, when I just met these, I think I met them somewhere in which town? I can't remember the state. But the 3 of them were taking picture, celebrating when the court decided, I don't know what Trump had done, when the court decided that Trump had questions to answer on some cases. And then I was like, well, he's still a presidential candidate. You're already on social media celebrating, and your leaders in your meetings and different places. So doesn't this have a haunting space for you? Because that's what people see. Social media is a very open space. Social media is a place we can talk, we can share good skills, we can share good knowledge, but it's also a dangerous place if you're not careful. I respect as a person, each one of us here, if you are participating in election in America, you have your vote. You know the person you want to vote. You know, you're very clear of that. But let not your thinking be a good reason to want to force people in making the same decision with you, because they equally are making a journey. Why am I saying this? After the election in November, one will be the president. I don't know which one. But then all of us will still be Americans. Can we still hold shoulders and just be together as a human being and humanity in this world? So as you use social media, let it be more of spreading peace. I can take myself to a newsroom and say, I just want to talk about peace. Let us talk that even after election, we need to be together. Another prevention technique that helped us in Kenya was listening sessions. Because those overwhelming need of people wanting trainings that we could not do the 3-day kind of training, which was taking longer days, and so many people wanted it, we ended up having a 1-day listening session. We just have a forum and let people talk about their views while we take notes. Because listening is a very powerful tool when it comes to expressing our emotion and also just people feeling they're listened. And listening session does not only come before the election. Listening session is actually very important when people are frustrated for their leader not being taken. People are frustrated for their effort not being put in consideration. People are frustrated for the energy they see outside from other people. And so this is what we call anxiety. So if we have listening forums, people just come and say, I just want to talk about how I feel. These elections did not go well. I didn't like how things happened, but you're just listening because they need to vent to continue existing peacefully and being comfortable. So those are some of the key tools that we have been using. As I get closer to a closing point, now these are two different countries. Kenya is a different country from America. We cannot compare them as far as even election is concerned, because I mean, America has been more developed. And so we hope system structures go well. But friends, I'll be very honest with us. One of the key fear I have for America is there's a lot of individual lives. And you're lacking the community pulling together. And I think this is what gave Kenyan strength. And so many people are asking me, most of the Quakers I met are asking me, how do you now even handle from here? Because the meetings I visited in the US, everybody was scared of election violence in the US. The people cried tears because they're already overseeing there'll be election violence in America. But as I smiled and I said, I'll pray for you people, I still ask myself, am I able to talk to my neighbor with love? But when my neighbor is in a different party, they have the signs in front of their houses of their political party. They're already my enemies. With that kind of attitude, we hide, and the anxiety is killing us deep. Another thing that I have seen, this might have affected even Kenya too, is there is a lot of guns, let me say weapons, in United States. You don't know who is going to attack who. Even you who is seated here, you're very innocent, but you're scared to walk in the streets. But again, closing yourself in the house, what does that make for? Look for 2, 3 people that you can talk to each other, even if it's through Zoom, and just tell yourself that it shall be well. Whatever the consequences, it shall be well. I was seated somewhere and a friend said that, but sometimes these people are in the other party. They're too rowdy. And especially was quoting the young people. And I said, they'll come and provoke you with their sentiments and their thoughts. Will you buy into their anger? Because they're expressing their anger in a different way. Will you buy into their anger? Try change topic or find a way of getting out of the discussion before you get confrontational. Because you're trying to keep peace, but the other person does not understand. It's their way or no way. So when you stand there, you want to argue about your understanding, then you find yourself in trouble. But sometimes they say, walk away does not mean that you're weak. It just means that you love the other person more, that you do not want any of you to get hurt. So as friends prepare for election preparation in November, as Getry, I'll be praying for you. I'll see how to support what I can and where I can, but I cannot change the situation to be better, depending on anybody's understanding. And you can neither change the situation. I know that people normally say, I'll not participate in election. Well, it's a free world. If you don't participate in election, you're actually participating in election, but giving your opponent the right to be elected. So these are choices that we have to make as long as we are in countries that need to look at democracy in a different way. I'll take any questions.
Wow, impressive.
Answer, Michelle, yeah.
Thank you, Getry. Nancy and Michelle, I think the next session is yours to lead us into breakout rooms for further discussion. Then we come back for a general discussion.
Getry, is there any questions? I have a few in mind, but let us start with yours. Are there any inquiries or questions you would like to invite people to explore together in what will be a 20-minute breakout session? And we'll have 3 or 4 people in each of the sessions.
Thank you, Nancy. I think one of the questions I'm looking at when I'm seated here is, how prepared am I in the upcoming election? Now, that is me, not Getry. Me as David Albert, me as John Ruffin, me as Malcolm. I mean, how prepared am I in the next election that is coming? And then question number 2, how do I relate with my neighbors? And my neighbor could be your neighbor next door. My neighbor could be the person you sit in a, maybe if you go to church or a club or an event, or your relative, your siblings or your children. How do you relate with them? And then question number 3, what are my plans after elections as a person?
Thank you, Getry, from the bottom of my heart. There's a phrase, beyond. I so wanted to hear what you had to say today, but I'm really moved deeply and have shifted and already shifting inside myself. So I'm really glad that you've invited us into this conversation. And we will, if there are no questions that anyone would like to ask or comments to the general group right now. Yes, Malcolm.
Getry, thank you so much for that. I have a question. It's a difficult one. I don't expect sort of, perfect answers to it. But maybe something to think about. I feel like in the United States, one of the problems that we have is that civic education is not very appealing to a lot of people. And so I wondered if you had any experiences of how to help it be more appealing to people, for people to perceive that it is in their interest to receive that type of education. And perhaps for people who think that they know everything already, because we also suffer from that in the United States, maybe how to gently give people the sense that they can always learn more about the way their country functions and benefit from that.
Thank you, Malcolm. Getry.
Oh, do I respond to that? A quick one, Malcolm. Before 2007, I trained my peace. I did training in alternative to violence and other peace trainings in 2003. And as we were going around to teach people about peace, most of them were like, we don't even need a training. We are a peaceful country. But there's always a time it will hit us hard. I remember in 2008, the medical system with CDC was not functioning because of the kind of cases they were bringing up. And some of us were put in a truck and taken to Kisumu in their office. We stayed in a hotel for 42 days to just be training doctors on how to handle the trauma. And I will sit and say, I don't even have a college certificate at that time because I just did my degree recently. And one doctor was saying that he shed tears and said that with all the degrees I hold, a very simple young lady can come and change my thinking about things. So what am I trying to say? And that is actually the challenge I see. When people know it all, that's when they become so destructive. But it doesn't mean that we do not talk about it. When you discuss about I want to use an example of climate change. There are all these technologies coming up and people can be in a meeting to discuss on how can you make this work, because just come up and it's a new thing. Let us also break down and talk about civic education. Have you ever thought about this in the Constitution? Why was it put there? So that people can start challenging it. We can look at children and make it a play. Write on ball some item things that are in the Constitution. And then I throw the ball and say, get to receive the ball. What is it reading? What does that mean as an American? How is it in the Constitution? So that it's a different model of trying to make sure that people get involved, whether they like it or not. But it's a discussion we can have in the kitchen, when you're with your son or your daughter, in a meeting house when you're with other friends, in a club when you're just even having your drink or something. It's a place you can just one topic at a time. And it will transform at least one person. Once one person, I'm looking here at how many people are here. Let's say 12. So if these 12 people can each reach two people, how many will they be? So by the time we get to election, we'll have at least 100 people will have a different thinking. Because I think where we are, I don't know how many people have read the Constitution of America in totality. I know Roy might because he's a lawyer. But how many even have understood it in totality? So that's where our political leaders are hunting us, because they sit with lawyers. They tell them that this thing in the Constitution can give you a go-ahead. I don't know if that answers your question. Small steps makes a difference. Nancy, can you go into breakout session?
We have a couple more questions shaping up here. Anna, please go ahead, Anna.
Can you hear
I'm
me?
not Anna, maybe someone. Sorry.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes. It's not a question, but it's appreciation for what Getry has said. I love your passion and enthusiasm and your on-the-ground experience, which is more valuable, really, than theory and philosophical ideas. So, and it's really nice to see you again, Getry. So I'm glad to be here. And also, I want to say, very, very timely, to remind us of the values and how difficult democracy can be.
And Ray, please go ahead.
Okay. I had two comments that I wanted to make, and I share the appreciation that others have expressed about Getry, the power of Getry's message and the importance of her message. One is that she commented about the United States being a developed country relative to various African countries, including her own of Kenya. And I received my education during the 1950s. And the perspective I had in the 1950s is that we were a developed country and that most of the world was undeveloped, and therefore we would be the model and should be the model. And that is such a false understanding, but it is the understanding I grew up with. But one of the supposed strengths during the 1950s is that we took civics and civic education seriously. And that has been scorned, and we have almost entirely lost that in America. It's been scorned initially by the left, which insisted that civics was only a bourgeois deception and that every right-minded thinker had to organize for the revolution. And now, more recently, by the right, which insisted civics is the tool by which all the undeserving, dark-skinned people of the world are taking away our white privileges. And it is taking on our form of tribalism, of how we destroy one other groups. The civics that was so developed in my upbringing was basically a civics solely of structure and primarily of illusion. We do not elect our president nationally. We elect him through about a half dozen states, him or her. We do not even elect our representatives. 90% of them are gerrymandered to have an outcome. What we need is a new civics in America, and Getry is teaching us the civics that we need to learn and teach. Thank you.
Elizabeth, I think your hand was up next.
Thanks, Nancy. I'll just remember to lower the hand so that there we go. Wow, well, I guess I'm many things on my mind, but one thing I would say, Malcolm, you had a great question about so many people, and that applies to me too. Essentially, what you were describing, Malcolm, was me. Now I'm much more interested. But in high school, I was like, oh my God, get me out of anytime anyone said, you want to take civics or let's talk about politics. Or I'm like, ugh, so boring, complicated. I don't understand it. Get me out of here. Why would I do that? But now I am fully like, I need to learn as much as I can because politics is one of the driving determiners of how our world works and what our lives are like and whether we are living in a just or unjust world and where it is on that spectrum. And it's so important. So I would say what I have done in the past when I've been in sort of teaching positions, I haven't done that much teaching, but mostly for like little kids. And my approach was to get them interested in something I wanted them to learn. My approach was always get to know them first and get to know their individual interests. And then once I know what really makes them excited, what really lightens up their eyes and brightens their eyes and what gets them talking and chatting and all that kind of stuff, then I can definitely find a way to connect that to whatever the subject matter is. Because I'm a big connector. Like my brain is always trying to my brain loves interdisciplinary subjects. I'm always thinking of connections. And so in whatever little, even if it sounds dumb, even if it sounds far-fetched, I often come up with these dumb sort of far-fetched ways of connecting things. But as long as you can find some connection, then you can sort of bring the individual interest of the child into the curriculum of what it is that you really want them to learn. So I think maybe that could be one possible approach to your question of how do we get people interested in civics education. Maybe there could be a way for middle schools and high schools and stuff to just identify what a student's central interests are, and then to provide different avenues for them to have a civics education according to what they're interested in. Like for me, if I was interested in wildlife conservation, that was a big thing for me in high school. I was very concerned. Like I didn't do much in it. I wasn't very active, but I was just really worried about environmental sustainability and wildlife and all that. And so the school could have, if they had that kind of civics program, they could have approached me and said, here's a couple different electives, possible elective classes you can take, or here's a project you can do that will look at how we might use political change and legislation and how we might approach those realms as a way of making the world a safer place for wildlife or decreasing negative human impact on wildlife. Anyway, I'll stop rambling. Just a little idea.
And John, if
Thank you.
you would go
Really
next,
helpful.
and then, oh, sorry, Malcolm. If you go next, then we'll go into breakout sessions, and I'll remind you of Getry's questions. And Malcolm, I'm sorry, I think my voice covered up what you said. If you wouldn't mind saying it again, I'd like to hear it, please.
No, I was just telling Elizabeth that was very helpful. Thank you.
Yeah, I would second that. Thank you, Elizabeth. And Elizabeth is the hope for what we see in America at this point, is the youth who have passion and interest and desire to make change and to be a connector with people who have different opinions. I just want to say, Getry, I'm deeply moved by your presentation, who you are, what you've been doing in Kenya, and in peacemaking, and also just the grasp that you have of what this has all meant, and reflecting not only what's been happening in Kenya back into the early 2000s, but how that relates to the U.S. and your interest in feeling for the U.S., having traveled here. We're in a dilemma as well. It's not quite as, I don't think, is broken up into as many pieces as you have in Kenya, with different tribal effects, etc. Though I think we do have tribes here in the U.S. as well. We just need to recognize that that's really what's kind of happening. The thing that intrigues me about what you've said, and what I guess my question is, and realizing we're going into this election season now with, and it is significant from the standpoint of not only what the outcome of the election is, who's going to be our leader going forward and what their message is, but also what the after effects of the election, depending on who's chosen. And there is some trepidation that if, let's just use names, if Kamala Harris is the chosen leader, what is likely to be fomented by the losing party? There's, in America at this point, there's we're kind of locked up, kind of a brain lock, if you will, unfortunately, in terms of our views. And so there are many who are very accepting of one candidate without really considering what some of the nuances and realities and facts are. It's just that we want change and we want this candidate, no matter how despicable and unreliable that person might be. So my question is around listening sessions, because I think that's really the heart of what we need to consider. And I'm interested in what is the guidance you'd give us to bring about those listening sessions? Our commitment to dialogue, and in some cases, the nature of dialogue, which invites people into communication, but to put aside their judgments, put aside their certainties, put aside their need to be right, is a very difficult thing in our society right now. People are not willing to do that. I don't want to put aside. I want to stay with it. How do we create those listening sessions? Because I think, that's going to be the heart of what happens after this election. And I have a notion that in terms of the nature of dialogue, what we're looking for is shared meaning. How do we find shared meaning underneath it all, in terms of going forward, in terms of taking care of our families, our budget, our future, our education? In any event, I don't want to rattle on more, but I mean, I'm so interested in what you have done in terms of having listening sessions. What do we do? How can you guide us? And thank you again so much for being here. A treasure our relationship, Getry, and thank you.
John, thank you. And I'm going to invite us now into the breakout sessions. We had allocated 20 minutes. Michelle and I were just discussing. I'm inclined, even though we're running shorter on time and we've already had a group discussion, to leave it at 20 with 4 people. The notion is to allow us to go deeper inside ourselves and with each other, to reach a place of our feelings, frankly, to try to not fall into the conversations I'm endlessly in, going back and forth about the parties and so forth. But I have put again the 3 questions Getry asked, and I think they are really try to stay on those for each of you, and then come out of the session sharing what you learned, so we can all hear it. We're a relatively small group. How am I prepared for the upcoming elections? And I will note, meaning, I think, from Getry's notion, internally, how am I feeling emotionally? And what, if anything, can I be doing over this pre-election time of the sorts of things that Getry was talking, the pre-healing work? That takes us to Getry's second question. How do I relate with my neighbors and other people in my network on these topics, and especially those in family, neighbors, whatever, whose views seem incomprehensible to me? How do we shift that energy back into trusting and caring about each other no matter what? And lastly, that takes us into beyond the election. What are the things that I can be preparing for now? And what will be the future ways of sharing and dialogue that John is just talking about? So you're going to be going into, you're not being given a choice. You're just going to end up in a breakout room as soon as we get those going here, and see you back in 20 minutes. We'll give you a 5-minute warning, and very much looking forward to when we get to hear from each other again coming up. Okay, Michelle, would you want to do the thing?
I assume we go to the same breakout room because we only have one computer, correct?
Yeah.
So
So you and I are not in breakout rooms, Michelle. We're still out. We're still in the
correct.
general.
I can assign us
That would be good.
in a moment. Let's see. 1 has 4, 2 has 4, 3 has 4. So I'm going to put the 2 of you into room 4, and then I'll pop into another one.
And will you pull us out? Do you want me to be trying to do that, or will you be doing that,
So
Michelle?
so it will automatically do the 1-minute warning, but I can set myself a timer and do the 5-minute warning. Just send a message and do a 5-minute warning. So I'll do that. Okay, I'm going to put you into room 4 with David, Elizabeth, and Maji, I guess.
Cool.
Okay. I think you still have to choose to join. Mm.
I understand peace internally in America is
Hello, everyone. Welcome back. I hope your breakout rooms were as rich as the one I got to drop in on.
Indeed, we thought 20 minutes would be so long. Over in an instant. So I think at this point, Robert, the plan was that you would invite the follow-up conversations in our group.
Okay. All right, members, welcome back. I'm sure you've had a very good discussion with your colleagues in those breakout rooms. And I think it's time we share what we've picked from there. And those with questions, you can surely bring them forth. However, sorry, I just wanted to tell you that for us also in Uganda, though America is coming first, we are on tension. Our first son, the son to the current president, recently tweeted and said, no civilian is going to rule Uganda again. And is the one who heads the army, and yet we are going to the elections. Which means if his father doesn't win the elections, there is no way they will allow any other person to rule. So this conversation and this presentation from Getry really relates with a lot with what we are all going through. So, yes, anyone with their hand up? Let's share, members. What have we picked from our breakout rooms? Yes, Anna.
I'm interested in how many people were interested in climate issues. I know in our group, I think the majority of us see climate as a major concern. What about in the other groups? It might just be my bias that I read it that way. And I should point out, I'm not in the States. I can't vote in the States. I'm back in the UK, and we've just had an election here. And we have a government that's slightly more sympathetic towards climate-related issues. Thank God.
We didn't discuss it in our group, but I just wanted to put my hand up as someone who is concerned.
I think climate tends to be one of the hardest issues to participate in terms of our politics, at least in the States, because really our politics is funded now by large corporations, and they're the ones who just don't want to deal with climate. So it's very hard. We are not organized in the United States to deal with climate, except in kind of a surface way. So appreciate your question, Anna.
Linda, just to build on that, I agree completely, and I feel like our only hope in the US is from the grassroots. I really do. I don't think anything's ever going to come from the parties.
However, Malcolm, don't you think that Joe Biden, the Democrats, have gone some way in addressing climate issues? Certainly much better than the other lot.
I do. That is also my perception, and it's informing my decisions. But I feel like the problem demands much more of us than either party will ever do, and so that's why, you know, I'm trying to force myself not to absolve myself by just saying I'm voting for the candidate who is going to do the most, because I know that it's not enough. So that doesn't mean I figured out what to do besides it, but I don't want to absolve myself.
I think here in the US, unfortunately, climate issues have been pushed further back in the bus in terms of issues that are on the table, that the issues of the economy, abortion, women's rights, et cetera, and immigration are the ones that are getting the most play, unfortunately. And climate is not, I don't know, been even mentioned, I think, in many cases, certainly by one party, is not mentioning that. Democratic initiatives maybe more so, but we're not hearing much of it, and that's unfortunate.
I think both parties are very, 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 very similar on climate issues. We've tripled the amount of oil and gas drilling in the last 4 years than we had in the previous 4 years. Oddly enough, from a global perspective, I think that's a good thing, because there's no reason why oil and gas should be raping the economies of other countries and pipelines. If we want to pay for the effects of oil and natural gas, we should be doing our own oil and natural gas. And if we're doing that in 10 years, if we're still around in 10 years, we have more control over those issues if we're doing the oil and natural gas drilling here. So I actually applaud the current administration for tripling the amount of oil and gas drilling that we're currently doing. You know, on the main issues that face the world today, I see remarkable similarities between the two parties, whether it's oil and natural gas drilling, whether it is the genocide, whether it is military spending. On the big things, there's not a lot of daylight between them.
Immigration is a big thing. And I see immigration as in the States, actually here in too. Immigration, I think, is an effect of climate change. People who want to move for a better livelihood, to be able to support their families for a better chance in life, because their areas are being devastated.
Yeah.
And those that can will move.
It might just be that because of climate, we'll end up with a completely different political system in the future. That's how I see it. I was listening to an interview that Nate Hagans did. He writes he writes and he does interviews with people in the climate arena. And he was talking to this guy who just came out with a book entitled The History for Tomorrow. And it was fascinating. He looked at civilizations in the past who had more of a democratic spirit, even going back to ancient Greece, where it was more not representative like what we have, but more direct participation. And you know, he was saying that these citizen assemblies, which are sprouting up everywhere, Malcolm, it's an example of what we could do at a local level. And I think, you know, I don't know how we get there exactly, but I think there's a seed of an idea there that eventually we're going to have to take control at the local level and really get to know our neighbors and, you know, create the kind of world we want to live in directly around us.
Yeah.
I find that very hopeful on a number of levels, and one of the surprising ones is I think that it can cut through a lot of the pernicious misinformation about climate change, because once you're talking about the things that we need to do as communities, they tend to be really positive things. Mm-hmm. And so it just cuts through the narratives that are being foisted on us. So yeah, that's really hopeful.
There's a lot of lived experience with the fact that when you're speaking of resilience and disaster preparedness, or what I call the 3 R's of resilience, readiness, rescue, and recovery, the right, the conservative, that is often where their hearts are. It is the easiest place to connect this immediate sense of how do we save our communities. And one of the difficulties with our efforts at dialogue these days is the issues are framed elsewhere where there is an agenda for conflict.
Mhm.
And if we go into our personal conversations, somehow feeling that we have to be in that framing, then we're kind of lost before we start. But if we reframe it, we have Americans have 80% agreement on big issues. And that has shown up again and again and again. And the politicians don't respond to any of them because it is not in their interest to do so. So going back to what you were saying, and then Getry, the 2 things, if I may say, that I got, one was reminding ourselves that the most important thing to engage others is to listen, to ask those questions of their life experiences, their needs, fears, hopes, aspirations, and find where there is enough convergence. And we've created a context of sympathy and mutual care out of which it becomes more possible to do those things that are within our reach, whether locally or in our professional networks or any other kinds of connections. And the other that moved me was to see how even my own attitudes have shifted towards fear and mistrust. And that the most important thing I can do is to go back inside and shift that back again to, I see it in others. I say, oh, we're moralizing in such a way that we're othering everybody, but guess what? I am too.
Yeah, I think that's important, Nancy. In our group, there was a real focus on the extraordinary power of dealing with these times with a level of mindfulness that allows you to be present with yourself and with the other, but not such that you are no longer an advocate, but that you're a respectful advocate because you're willing to honor the truth of the other, if in fact you can reach a kind of equilibrium in the conversation, which is what dialogue is largely about, that it affords there to be a moment where you, as I think I said it in the group, where you find that you've gone through the door together and you are 2 humans relating to issues differently, but able to see a little bit more of what it is that's being spoken. The climate for me is, it is something that the US can be doing something about, but it is, as I said at the very beginning of the climate dialogue group, it is a symptom. It is still a symptom of something larger that has to be dealt with. And until some of those issues are acknowledged, I think we won't get much headway with the politicians or anyone else. I am mindful of the fact that we have not heard from Pauline and Resiato, and I wanted to welcome them. I invited Resiato, and I'm so glad Malcolm also came at an invite, but it would be very lovely to hear from Pauline Resiato as well. And also, I guess, from Majiyama, I'm sorry. If there's any interest in their speaking. Yeah.
Maybe you go first. Hi, everyone. I'm sorry for coming late. So hi, everyone. Thank you so much for inviting me in this, can I call a lecture hall, which is very, very brain, it's a lot. I'm really learning a lot. And thank you so much for the first individual from Kenya who was speaking. We really kind of connect because we are all both East Africa, Uganda, Tanzania, and Kenya. I was so happy to hear her presentation. It's very unique and very beautiful. It's just that we as Tanzanian, NGO like the one that I'm working at. And first of all, let me begin by introducing myself. I'm so sorry. My name is Resiato Lampaka. Actually, I'm from Tanzania, and I'm from the pastoralist community. Everybody may know because they call us the indigenous community, Maasai community from the northern part of Tanzania. I'm working in an NGO that is called the LEA, actually. The long form of LEA is Livelihood and Environmental Agendas. And apart from that, we are also working for human rights. We are human rights defender as an NGO, three of us that are working within. And what we have been doing in LEA, actually, you might have been hearing or seeing through the social medias like Twitter or YouTube on what the pastoralist community has been going through in the northern part of Tanzania, in the area that is very enriched for tourists called Ngorongoro. And we have been really facing a lot of challenges as the community because of the land, the access to your lands wants to be given to the investors by the president, and the indigenous community whose background of education is really zero. Many of them have not gone to school because they still believe in the in the tradition ways of life, which is very good to some extent. They've been going through a lot because they want to be moved to another area so that their land can be dominated with tourism, but people have been struggling a lot to not allowing the government to actually take the land. So as LEA, we have been in front to ensure that their voices are heard and also they speak for themselves. And in the recently, this month on 17th, from 5th to 17th, there have been a very peaceful demonstrations by the pastoralist committee themselves, and they were they wanted to pass their word of concern to the world, telling them that they are not going to allow the government to remove them from the area because they have the right to stay there. It has been their life for almost 60 years, and what really made the people to demonstrate peacefully is in Tanzania, we are going to have an election in the next year in 2025 in October. So according to the news on voting, the area of Ngorongoro was not registered to vote, and that will actually eliminate the whole area and the whole people, because if the area is not registered in the constitution of the country, that means people do not live there. So people actually demonstrated demanding that they should be registered to vote. So through the demonstration of almost 1,000 of Maasai people.
She froze.
Network?
She lost her connection.
Yes, she is no longer part of the group.
Yeah, Pauline then.
Unfortunate.
In the meantime, I got the sense, and I may be wrong, but Ray, was there something that you wanted to say earlier on? I got the sense that there was something that wanted to come out. I might have been wrong.
Okay.
Who were you asking?
Pauline.
Oh,
Malcolm, who are you asking?
I was asking Ray. Yeah.
Oh,
yeah, let him say something.
I actually I had a message in mind and I have forgotten what it is, but I just I wanted to just say what I know that we're all feeling is that Getry and now the Tanzanian friend who I'm forgetting, but Getry, you are such a gift to Kenya, you're a gift to America, and you're a gift to the world. And I just we need to listen deeply to what you have shared with us, and not only to work for peace, but to work for peace rooted in a deep respect for the right of others to live their lives with dignity and to express their disagreements with us.
I think I want to appreciate Robert for bringing Rosetta on board. And I think Rosetta, I hope we keep in communication because I might be coming to Tanzania mid of October, probably Tunduma, but maybe we can link up so that on my way to Tanzania, we can hook up and see.
Yeah.
Because I'm sure I'll be in Tanzania during the election time to observe the election.
Yeah.
So I hope we keep the communication going.
And Getry,
She's
that is-
here, if she can, yeah.
Yeah. And Getry, that is the email that I sent you, and maybe you saw it. Yes. Yeah.
And I just also want to say a connection between our friend from Tanzania's message and the environmental issue around oil and all of that is that part of the impetus of the displacement of the Maasai in Tanzania is so that the petro plutocrats of Dubai, etc., can have their private hunting grounds there instead of the Maasai being able to maintain their own lifestyle.
Yeah.
Sorry. Can I just talk about climate change? I'm sorry, I went off the line. And climate change is a very, very crucial thing as Leah, because that is our core. And seeing all these things that are happening, the lands being grabbed by investors, and the government that is really leading you does not even consider how long you have been staying in that area, is something that is really, really very hurtful at the moment in the Tanzanian, in this pastoralist community. Because if the land is going and being grabbed daily and daily, being given to the investors, these indigenous, or these people that have been staying there for years, they're also increasing. Population is growing, and the challenge of climate is affecting, because taking an example in Tanzania, this is the high peak month of drought, and the pastoralists themselves only depend on the grass. Now imagine the area of grass that have been living in many years has been given to the investors. It's something that is really hectic, and that really need another eye to see on this, because the climate is changing, the land is going, so the future of the people is really going to be very dramatic in the future. That is what I can say about the climate change. And thank you for this opportunity.
If I may say, speaking of opportunities, I'm going to jump ahead. Equatorial Voices Network is about inviting people such as yourself to be in deep conversation with each other, and we in the North get to eavesdrop and learn. And it would be wonderful if you could be one of our upcoming speakers. Well, I'm sure we'll figure that out and be in touch with you if you are willing. And the particular topic is one I've been following with great heartbreak and outrage for a while. So I'm really glad to have an opportunity to be in dialogue about it. And I notice, Larissa, that I'd love to hear what you have to say. And I also know that my friends, Leoma and Pauline, haven't spoken yet and would love to hear from you as well. So Larissa, if I'm not putting you on the spot, might I invite you to speak?
Thank you. I did want to say something, so I appreciate the moment. I want to thank you, Nancy, for including me on your mailing list. I was so happy to see the notice for this event. So really appreciate that. And again, to Getry, you know, the part of your beautiful presentation that is sitting, you know, that I'm sitting with right now is the listening. I really am taking that away. Not only to listen to others, but to be listened to. And that is the blessing of a gathering like this, that we learn so much, as, you know, just from Resiato coming in and able to tell us such an enormous work that she's doing in that part of the world. To our reactions to it, it's so it changes the day and it will change my thinking going forward. But not just hearing from others, but being able to communicate with others on a topic that we have in common in a way that makes me feel heard and, you know, just gives me strength going forward. So I really appreciate this time together today. Thank you.
Thank you, Larissa. Yes, Pauline has not yet said anything. Is she with us? Yes, someone's hand is up.
Well,
Leoma,
well, just that it's so much easier to know in theory what I need to do than to do it in practice. I mean, in theory, it's pretty obvious. We need to find our common ground. We need to find ways to hear beneath what we think we know to the deeper truths that are underlie it all. And that it's so challenging to do when there's so much invested in lies, where the deeper truth of what's underneath the lie is wanting the power or wanting, so it's just, I'm just holding that challenge of how to actually do what I know we need to do together. Because as we proceed forward, no matter what we spout as humans, the natural world is going to have its say connected to what we do. So, yeah.
let me note 2 follow-ups if you can make sure that I'll get to you in just a moment, Malcolm and Maji. I want to note that make sure that your email is in the chat. We can follow up in that way. And I will also note that Getry and I and Leoma, all Quakers, have begun a practice of meeting together on Sunday mornings at 9 a.m. on Zoom to go into what's called unprogrammed Quaker worship, where we basically spend an hour together mostly in silence and meditation. And it is a way of going deep and an opportunity to listen. You would be welcome. So if you put your email, if you note that you'd be interested in that, let me know and I'll make sure that you have a link to that as well. And now, Malcolm, you had your hand up, and then Maji. Oh, hang on.
I just wanted to harken back to when Getry originally did the presentation, and just in amongst everything, she made a very poignant mention of community and vis-a-vis the United States, and feeling that perhaps the advantage that she had in her country was that community was there. And so I just wanted to ask everyone, maybe it's a bit late in the day to bring it up as a major topic, but I just wanted to ask everyone, how do we all feel about whether we have community or whether we have enough community, and whether it's taking the form that we would want it to take?
Maji.
Leoma, thank you. You are always say the right things and just move me so much. It is hard to do what we're trying to do. And it's hard because there's forces with corporations and things that are very much against what we're trying to do. And so I struggle with this, on one hand, yeah, I so appreciate inviting me, and I appreciate deeply what you said, Getry. listening is difficult. I mean, and I've done this climate thing since 1990. And I thought at one point, really very hopefully, that, well, people, once they know what's going on, surely they will do something. That didn't happen. And so, how do we go forward? I loved the idea of what you did in Kenya. I don't see how that's possible to do in the States. And so I guess I just have a lot of food for thought and a great deal of appreciation. And that's it, Chuck. Thank you.
Pauline Seals, another Brit. I know you're hiding there, as you often do, somewhere, and would love to see your face for a minute and hear your voice if you can manage it. I also know you had some stuff to do with your getting out of your cabin today, so maybe you're not available.
Pauline is no longer here.
No.
I saw her on the participant list. I just checked. Oh, so maybe her camera's still here, but she isn't.
No.
No, she dropped off.
I think she just dropped off.
Robert, my friend, we haven't actually heard from you except as our leader and facilitator. Might you even come on with your camera again and share what's on your heart at this point and wrap this time up that we've been together?
Okay.
Robert, before you wrap up,
Yes.
I just want to be consciously aware, friends, that it's never an easy journey, but we have to take a bold step to start from somewhere, however difficult it is. I appreciate Nancy, Linda, I think when you're talking about there are a lot of corporates that are not doing what should be done, but they're supporting what might be a destructive method. But if we go back to the masses, and who are the masses? The people, the small voices that we never want to hear. They're a very huge mass. Because they're easily mobilized in destruction, we also need to look on how easily we can give love so that they're mobilized in unity. The cost might definitely be clear. I looked at Rosetta's questions from Tanzania, she's not here, when she was talking about the Maasai community and the voting pattern, and I've experienced that in Mount Elgon, whereby when people are going to elections, there was a certain political party, a member of parliament, who believed that he's the only one who should be on the ballot paper. But then the emerging people are coming on the ballot paper. During every election, there'll be mass killing, people attack, and they'll say people are coming from Uganda to kill people in Mount Elgon because Mount Elgon is actually bordering Kenya and Uganda. So like one marketplace, one polling center, like it's a marketplace, they use a school. And just because there are two people voted for a different name from his, they'll attack and kill people in that marketplace. Innocent women. And because they did not have a voice. But right now, the same community I'm talking about, they are celebrating and going into election like it is a responsibility they have to fulfill. Because there's a change of mind and their voices are now being seen and heard. So the masses that are very small in thinking, they're more powerful than the corporates. Stick positive. It won't just happen today, but start from somewhere. Robert, go ahead.
Wow. Thank you so much, Getry. I think you've surely guided us. You've given us a very interesting topic to discuss, but also a lot of lessons. In our group, I was sharing with John that one of our politicians, who is a former musician, after 2016, he sang a song before he became a politician. That in Luganda it said "Obululute butwawula," which means elections should not divide us. He's called Bobby Wine. He has a very interesting song. It is called "Obululute butwawula." He sang that even if we are in the same households and we have different views and opinions, on who the candidates are, we shouldn't be divided. We shouldn't become violent against each other because of mere elections. And he says that elections come and go, but our lives are valuable. Once you lose it, it is gone. They are irreplaceable. It is a very, very good song. It had a lot of meaning. And I was telling John that as we preach peace in all these communities where we are, we should encourage accommodation of different views and perspectives in terms of political thinking. And I told him something that I wouldn't want anyone to take at heart, that the globe or the whole world doesn't think about your elections the way you perceive it. Because whether it is a Democrat or a Republican, the world still receives wars that are facilitated by either parties. And in Bobi Wine's song, he sang that politicians are all the same. They preach this, practice something different. We've seen it, and Getry actually pointed it out with their politics in Kenya. It is the same everywhere. So as America is going to elections, we should learn to accommodate political views of other colleagues of ours, whether friends, whether family members, without taking it so personal. Actually, when we integrate emotions into our line of thinking, that's where violence comes in, because you feel you are losing something because a friend of yours has a different opinion. So I think, Getry, this was a very powerful presentation from you, and you do a lot of dialogue than we as EVN do, because I think it is so much into your work. I really appreciate you for that. We wish you could come to Uganda and do something to our government, because we are headed to a war zone and we've seen it. So it is the message that I leave to my colleagues out there, that elections, yes, we can discuss them, but let us not put emotions to it. And let not define our relationships or the relationships you have with other people. Because elections after November, your lives will move on. And once we preach that to others, anyone who will have tried to represent a politician to demonstrate or to bring havoc or bring violence, surely if you convince them, they will withdraw. They will know this is just a team of liars promising things they can't fulfill. Yeah, thank you so much. And unless someone has a question or an addition, it is really
I'm looking at Rahul.
Oh, Rahul has been silent. Thank you. Thank you. We've not heard anything from Rahul. Yes, Rahul. Come
It's
and say
great to
something
hear
as
from
we
you,
wrap up.
Robert.
Thank you.
Thank you, Robert. Thank you, Getry. It was wonderful listening to you. You always speak a mind we have gone through many times. The way you delivering today's dialogue is exceptional, literally, because I can really connect with how Indian elections are happening, how political parties are buying votes in terms of many social welfare schemes, they called it. How people get killed in party wars. So I can totally connect with Global South, how election is going on and going to be. So thank you so much for bringing this. We have very different perspective now, because in US upcoming election is coming towards. So it's really important to deeply dwell into this topic. I'm I'm really touched with that. Thank you so much, Getry. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Rahul. Okay. My appreciation once again to Getry. And before we round up, I would love to call Nancy to give us a program for when we shall meet again. Sorry, I've been up and down. I had a long journey, so I'm not settled. I'm trying my level best to moderate, but it has not been easy. So Nancy, kindly communicate members about what our next program will be. And I would encourage each new member to please share your email with us. We would love to build on this conversation and to network with you as we build on a team of people who are passionate about climate and world peace. Thank you. Back to you, Nancy.
And thank you, Michelle, for the wonderful work and being there for us.
Thank you, Michelle.
Michelle, you haven't been invited to speak at all. I'm sorry.
She didn't say anything.
Granted.
Sorry.
Would you please, I know
Sorry.
would you please share with us a bit, and then I will answer Robert's question about what we're doing next, but please do speak to us.
Okay. Well, just, right now, just feeling so much gratitude for everything that's been said and all of these opportunities for learning, and really, for me, sort of challenging myself of how does that listening apply, given that so much of what I do is much more in the realm of on the streets confrontational activism. But in this climate emergency that we're facing, just that recognition that the challenges that lie ahead are going to require us to be able to talk across what have been ideological differences and just interact on the level of our shared humanity. So really, really beautiful. Thank you.
I'll just note that Michelle is one of the leaders in Scientists Rebellion. And they show up in the streets with their white jackets on, which kind of changes the dynamics. Bless you for that work, Michelle, and all of your environmental work. Okay, I'm going to do a quick screen share here, if it works out, and bring up our these are the next. We have, we being Equatorial Voices Network, have presentations and with dialogue, action dialogues through the rest of the year. And the person who will be speaking to us next month is a dear friend, Delo Gorda from Ghana, who's just completing his doctorate in nutrition and a second doctorate in public health. And young as he is, was made the chair of the Pan-African Conference on Nutrition and Public Health that occurred recently. The focus of his research is the nutritional value of indigenous foods, and his concern is how throughout the world, the so-called convenience foods and destruction of the soils are taking over, including in Ghana and East and West Africa. So he'll be here sharing with us. And then that's the end. We're doing the fourth Friday of each month at 7:30 in the morning Pacific time and 5:30 in the evening East African time. And then in November, Peter Ochiende and Elizabeth Bisno, who's with us today, the new directors of the newly formed Perma Gardens Foundation, will be sharing what they are up to. David Albert, who's also with us, is the major support of this financially and in terms of his wisdom and insight. And Peter's been doing this work and training other Africans in it. And Elizabeth is our new executive director. We are looking for advisors, and we are also looking, the board will be a youth board. The governing board making the decisions will all be much younger people. That was David's request. And then lastly, in the last month of the year in December, and this isn't the fourth Friday. I lied because that's too close to Christmas. Sokrat will be speaking about his work in humanitarian aid and community resilience in Burundi. And this will be our first effort to do a Francophone presentation. And as it happens, Elizabeth is quite fluent in French. So we'll be working together to see how that works. Many of you here, several of you here today would love to have you be presenters and lead our dialogues. And the intention always is that we get, create a,
oh, sorry.
Go deeper. Yes, please go ahead.
Just wanted to jump in really quick. Please send any question you have about the Perma Gardens Foundation, because Peter and I will be presenting about it. And of course we could present some updates and stuff, but if anyone has questions, please send literally anything. I can send out some potential preliminary information just to maybe let people know the basics of what it's about. But if anyone has questions, I don't know if this is okay for the format, Nancy. Just a proposal of like, maybe if people want to ask questions so that we can prepare for a really thorough presentation, or should we save questions for after the presentation about Perma Gardens Foundation?
I think your idea of people sending questions is a great one. I don't know if your email is in the chat, Elizabeth, but if you want to put it in again, I think that would be phenomenal. And I'll just make one last comment that one of the things I've really come to comprehend these last 2 years, when the climate issues are framed in the global north, it's all about energy and trying to maintain the industrial world we understand, but do it somehow in some other way. And it's not yet clear that we can actually do it in another way that isn't harmful. But that's the focus. When the global south is allowed to frame the issues, the very, very first question is food and food security and water and restoring the earth and resilience and survival. At this point, we in the north are a little out of touch with our own fragility. So I am grateful to be reminded, and the fundamental, Malcolm, as you picked up on what Getry said, is to rebuild community. That's what has always allowed human beings from 300,000 years. That's what made us succeed. So
as Leoma reminded us, Mother Nature will weigh in. And today in Tallahassee, the state capital of the state of Florida, they may be more focused on the Hurricane Helene than on its supposed threat of being subjected to woke politics.
Okay, friends. Thank you very, very much. I hope to see you in further dialogues, and in between we've shared emails to stay connected and build community together. That's bottom line that's actually what we're doing. So bless you all. And Getry, my dear friend, bless you for always giving us what I see as the clear sense of direction.
Bye. Wonderful.
Mm.
Thanks, Getry. Thanks, Nancy.
Bye-bye. Thank you for coming.
Thank you.
Thank you, Getry.
Thank you so
everyone, for
much.
coming.
Everyone.
Bye,
everybody.
everybody. Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you. Thank you, Michelle, for